All right, guys, 5 sleepers here to target.
Okay.
Let's jump right into it. Number 1, Rico Dowdle. Yahoo ADP of 131.6 here, Matthew. I would be RB49 for a guy that there's a world where he's the running back that gets the bulk of the carries on this roster.
Yeah, I mean, look, somebody in Dallas is going to get the ball, right? And I actually think the Dallas backfield, like, it's not too expensive to just basically get the entire backfield. Dowdle's going after Zeke, but the fact of the matter is that there are 307 touches up for grab with Tony Pollard now in Tennessee. So Dowdle, who has actually led the backfield last year in yards per carry and yards per target last season and scored, 12 or more fantasy points in all but one of his games last year when he got double-digit touches, has showed some improvement. I will also say I kind of like Ezekiel Elliott in the Najee Harris role, which is that I don't know that Ezekiel Elliott is great at this stage of his career, but I also think he's Ezekiel Elliott and that there is something to an NFL locker room. Connor, this is something you can speak to as well because you're around it all the time with the Jets. But I say this about fantasy analysis all the time. We forget that they are players and players are human beings with emotions and that a locker room, an NFL team is like any other business. There are politics and a pecking order. And
so are coaches.
And coaches and everything like that. And so my point is it's hard for me to see Mike McCarthy in a team where Jerry Jones sort of controls everything. Mike McCarthy saying, hey, Zeke, hey, 2-1, go take a seat. I don't know. I think Zeke's going to get a chance. Now, he may ultimately just not still have it. So I think him and Dowdle. But my point is that they may not be the most efficient or effective, but it's going to be one of the best offenses in the NFL, and somebody is going to run the ball in Dallas, and it's not going to cost you much to, in fact, get one or both of those guys together, and you sort of see who emerges.
Yeah, I think this is the exact type of situation in principle to hunt for an efficiency. The Cowboys last year were the #1 scoring offense in the NFL.
Yeah.
Now, the offensive line is probably a little bit weaker, but it's still the same shot.
The young guys look good, though. They look good.
Okay.
I'll say that.
Yep. Guyton
They've
looks
looked
better
really
than
good this
expected.
summer. And
Yep.
Cooper Beebe. Yep.
It's still Dak Prescott in a dome, CeeDee Lamb spacing the field. So I think that between Zeke, who should get work, and then also on the other side, Zeke is 29 and hasn't had a great year since 2019. So there is an opening for Dowdle. So I think both of those guys can provide value.
Whenever I watch Dowdle, he just looks like a poor man's Pacheco to me. And I'm excited by that, the running style. I just wonder if Zeke eats at the goal line for them, that it hurts Dowdle, who can lead the team with rushing.
I think if you were, this is going to sound insane, but this feels a little bit to me like Ertz and Sinnott in Washington, which is that I think Zach Ertz is going to actually be a productive, reasonably productive fantasy tight end for the first 5 weeks. And then at some point, Ben Sinnott's just going to take over. And I think that, I don't know that he'll be reasonably effective, but I think Zeke for the first 5 weeks is just going to he's going to be the starting running back of the Cowboys and he's getting an opportunity, but I think there's a chance that Dowdle just sort of takes over because at some point Zeke's just going to run out of gas.
Another running back here, Jay, going right after Dowdle at 132.5 is Jaleel McLaughlin. Now, we know Javonte Williams is expected to lead this backfield, but McLaughlin had a big role as a pass catcher at times last year.
Yeah, he did. He was exciting. And I think the main thing here is that I'm not sure if Sean Payton's in love with Javonte Williams and the way that he plays. I think there is an opening there, whether it is Jaleel McLaughlin, your man, Audric Estime as well, I think is actually someone who can be drafted as a late-round flyer. So I think this Broncos situation is very unsettled. And look, it's not going to be an amazing offense, but it seems like Nix is going to be able to run it at a competent level.
The other thing that was interesting is that McLaughlin gets some red zone work. He gets some red zone work. They like the pass catching ability of him as well. And so I agree with you. I think this, just what we're talking about with Bo Nix, I don't think the Broncos offense is going to be great, but I also don't think it's going to be a disaster. And I think they're basically all being left for dead. And the only guy that's being drafted in any sort of reasonable way is Javonte Williams. And he's the guy that makes me the most nervous because I agree with you. It doesn't seem like Peyton loves him. There were rumors at one point that Williams might not make the team. He's going to make the team. But again, I have a decent amount of Audric Estime just
see what happens with it.
See what, Stash. He hasn't had a great camp, it doesn't seem like.
Up and down.
For
sure.
But for certainly McLaughlin, clearly has that third down role kind of carved out, and Peyton has found him. Feels like he's his guy. He was drafted by Peyton last year, and so you could certainly see a scenario where McLaughlin has a third down role with upside for more.
A wide receiver going in this range, Matthew, that 131 range based on ADP is Romeo Doubs. With Green Bay, he led their wide receivers in snap rate, targets, and routes, but he is not being valued above the rest of the guys in this wide receiver room.
No one likes Romeo Doubs, right? Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, These are all guys that routinely get drafted higher. And my point is like I ultimately think it's going to be a wide receiver by committee. I think all 4 guys will have big games throughout the season. It's going to be hard to predict which one in any given week, barring an injury. Like Watson's obviously struggled with his hammy, but all 4 guys are going to get run. But if you're like, we like this offense, we like Jordan Love quite a bit, we think all of them are talented. If you want to take a piece of the Packers passing game, Romeo Doubs is by far the cheapest way to get a piece of the Packers offense. So I think he's really underrated because, again, people are, they remember some of the flashier plays with Wicks or Jaden Reed especially, and of course Christian Watson just, has been a big play guy ever since he came to the league.
I think with people that Doubs has a little bit of a stench because he was so hyped in his rookie season. It's like, is this guy going to be Devontae Adams? And then he just kind of didn't do much in his rookie year with Rodgers. But last year, like he was, to your point, he was the most targeted guy. And I think when there is such a cluster and uncertainty around 4 guys, like there is some rationale in just taking the guy who's the cheapest. And he is that at the moment.
And I think people would be shocked to learn this stat. He was top 6 in the NFL in end zone targets last year. He was top 10 in red zone targets among wide receivers. Like Jordan Love likes to look for him when they get in close. And so again, he's the cheapest of the 4 guys. If you want to take a stab at the Packers passing offense, why not get the guy that's the best value?
Yep.
Another cost-effective option at wide receiver, Joshua Palmer here, Jay. I mean, we say it all the time, but somebody has to catch the ball in this Chargers offense, no matter how little they want to actually throw. And Palmer's right in the mix for them.
Yeah, and look, this offense is still going to take deep shots as well. And I think that there's a good chance Josh Palmer is the wide receiver 1 for Justin Herbert. And just that sentence alone gives him a certain value now. It doesn't seem like Quentin Johnston has really made that many strides. We'll have to see with the rest of the receiver room. But I think Palmer, even though it doesn't feel like it, he is the safest bet.
McConkey's been banged up, too.
Yeah.
McConkey's been banged up, and McConkey's not a guy in college that played a ton of snaps either. So
no, that was a Brock Bowers-driven offense quite a bit. So
again, Josh Palmer, he's had 16 career games where he's gotten at least 7 targets, and he averages 14.4 fantasy points per game. You're telling me you're going to get double-digit? You easily could get double-digit fantasy points from a guy going outside the top 60. He's my wide receiver 51, but on Yahoo, I think he's going
67.
He's going 67. It's like
Justin Herbert's the number 1 receiver.
He's right. They're going to throw it to somebody. Yeah. They're absolutely going to throw it, and everyone's enamored by McConkey, and I love McConkey and Dynasty too. But even if it's just those 2 guys, you know what I mean? He's competing with Will Dissly for targets and
very
Quentin
narrow.
Johnson. It's just.
Yeah, it's not like this team's going to go 14-3 and be running the ball 70% of the time.
They're going to be in good, close games.
Yeah.
Right. The defense is going to take a little while to build it that way. So I'm with you. At some point, you have to be in a throw script in the NFL. You don't always get to decide how much you get to run the ball.
Yeah. I mean, again, you think about the Lamar Jackson-led offenses in Baltimore where they were very run-heavy under Greg Roman. They still had, Mark Andrews obviously was very productive, but they had productive pass catchers. They had people, they threw the ball.
It's still Justin Herbert.
It's still Justin, right. That's the Braves' point. There's a very good shot he's the number 1 wide receiver for Justin Herbert. Yeah. And he's going outside the top 60. What are we doing, people? Yeah.
All right, our last one here for today's sleepers, Matthew. Noah Fant at tight end, ADP of 138. Tight end, that would be tight end 23 here. And this is somebody that has always had the talent and now gets an offensive coordinator in Ryan Grubb that we know what kind of passing attack he could develop.
He wants to push the ball, obviously. They'll be much more up-tempo this year, I think more pass-friendly this year. Colby Parkinson and Will Dissly no longer on the Seahawks. Between the 2 of them, that's 66 tight end targets from last year on an offense that I think was more conservative than what we're going to see this year in Seattle as well. There's been only 2 seasons that Noah Fant has actually been able to get on the field and have a 70% or more snap rate, where he's actually been a starter. And in those 2 years, he was basically a borderline tight end 1. This is a guy that I remember when he came out of college, Connor, that he was
massive ceiling.
Massive ceiling. Yeah. He was a first-round draft pick. And so we think that talent is somewhere in there. And so he's going as tight end 23 on Yahoo, Jay.
Yeah. I've always had a soft spot for Noah Fant. It's kind of like Jake Ballard back in the day. I really like Jake Ballard's work. Noah Fant, for some reason, resonates in the same way. I just want shares of this Seattle team. I think the Seattle team's being very underrated. Their win total is only 7.5. They won
the
9
over on that.
games last year, and I think they got better. I think this coaching staff between McDonald and Grubb, it's going to be a modern
very
offense.
good.
Geno Smith's just underrated as well. Like, people have kind of moved on from Geno. Geno's fine. Geno's an average to above average quarterback in a loaded receiver, like between JSN, Metcalf, Lockett. I understand that takes away from Fant a little bit, but I just think this offense is going to be really good and in scoring position more than people think.
And by the way, like Walker and Charbonnet, they have a good running back.
I think his offense is loaded. I think the defense with McDonald, who is seemingly the best defensive mind in the sport just about these days, I think this team is going to win 9 or 10 games and make the playoffs, which is like plus 200 for them to make the playoffs.
Okay, you have a chance to win $1 million in the NBC sweepstakes on Yahoo Fantasy. Just download the redesigned Yahoo Fantasy app or go to NBCSports.com/fantasymillion for additional details. What are you waiting for?
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.